My husband's good friend asked to borrow our car, but I stopped him, saying we couldn't lend it without a driver's license. My husband thought I was making him lose face, so he drove the car into me, knocking me down, and then lent the car out. As a result, the borrowed car was involved in a car accident, and our family had to pay a huge compensation. My husband didn't repent, and during a heavy rainstorm at night, the house was washed away. There was only one small wooden boat at home, which he used to rescue the neighbors. Regardless of my daughter and me struggling desperately in the flood, it caused my daughter and me to drown in the flood. When I opened my eyes again, his good friend shamelessly asked to borrow my car. I looked at my husband. You are the head of the household. You decide. This time, I'm going to make him be a good person to the end, even at the cost of his life. 1. Sister-in-law. There's something going on at home. Could you lend me the car for a few days? Don't worry, I'll cover the gas money. I won't let you suffer even the slightest loss. My husband elbowed me. Someone's waiting. Hurry up and speak. I snapped out of my daze and faced two repulsive faces. In my previous life, my husband's friend Yuxiang asked us to borrow the car to haul goods. I asked him if he had a driver's license, and he looked at my husband Zhao Yiming and said no. I asked him what he was carrying, and he stammered. Unable to explain clearly, I told my husband to help him load it, but he waved his hand in refusal and became angry. He said, if you don't want to lend it, just say so, don't go on and on about it. He turned to leave with a dark expression, but my husband slapped me to the ground and said, they're lending us the car as a favor, so I'm giving them the keys right now. I blocked the car and explained to my husband, driving without a license, if there's an accident, they'll come after you. You know exactly where we stand. If something goes wrong, even selling our house and shops won't raise enough money to cover the compensation. His good friend was right there, making sarcastic remarks, saying how could a husband not even control his own wife? What kind of man is he? Furious, my husband opened the car door, stepped on the gas, and sent me flying. Our 5-year-old daughter came running over crying for her mom, nearly getting scraped under the car's tires. It was only by holding my daughter and rolling on the spot that we avoided the car backing up again. To this day, I still can't forget that heart-stopping scene. Hearing this, I smiled faintly and looked at my husband. In our family, my husband has the final say. My husband's friend immediately turned to look at my husband, aiming, we're brothers, you won't refuse to lend it, will you? In my previous life, my husband was very generous to outsiders, especially to Yoshan, this good brother of mine. He used my husband's car to carry passengers without a license and got into a car accident. The other person just called him brother, and without a word, my husband, being so loyal, sold the house to pay for the surgery. I was knocked flying and broke a bone, in agony so severe I wished I were dead, yet he told me I could live but not die, refusing to spend a single penny on my medical treatment or that of our daughter. My husband couldn't resist the provocation and immediately agreed. Brothers, why be so polite with me? Here, the car keys. Man, you're so loyal. His friend flattered him with a few compliments, making his husband feel elated, completely ignoring the series of consequences that would follow, even the possibility of being sentenced to prison. In my previous life, I desperately warned him, only to end up in the hospital with my daughter. Then he said, deserved it. He even blamed me for making him lose face, and the next day he had us, who were seriously injured, discharged from the hospital. My daughter and I were lucky to survive in this life. Not only will I not remind him, I will be even more generous than him. I took out my phone and handed it to my husband, thinking of others, and said, the car is almost out of gas, transfer 3,000 for the fuel. His good friend quickly took advantage, his voice even louder. Thanks, sis. Turning to my husband, he said, bro, you really married a great wife. How could my husband let a good guy card end up on me? He immediately patted his friend on the shoulder and, even more generously than me, pointed to the mangosteens in the distance, saying, take a few baskets back, the kids love these. The mangosteens in the store are sold at 50 yuan per jean. My wholesale price is also around 20 yuan. The other party is someone who takes whatever is offered, and they loaded every single mangosteen I had just brought back into their car without missing a single one. It's worth at least 4 or 5,000 yuan. My husband huffed and puffed as he helped load them into the car. As the other person drove away, he still didn't forget to say, if you need anything, come by often. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. The whole family of my husband's good friend is just like him. In a past life, he was driving my husband's car without a license and got into an accident. His wife and sister came looking for her husband, just complaining about being poor for a moment. The husband then opened his heart to them, taking full responsibility for the accident on his own. As a result, I ended up burdened with millions in debt and was forced to return to live in our old rural house. When the other party became paralyzed, my husband without a word brought them home and left me to take care of them. Every meal was lavishly prepared with fish and meat, my daughter, and I could only eat steamed buns with plain boiled water. I complained to my husband that he shouldn't have lent the car, shouldn't have taken responsibility, and shouldn't have brought that person home. His so-called good friend was making a scene, throwing all the food I had carefully prepared for him. My husband, however, cared too much about his pride and pinned me to the ground, beating me until I lost control of my bladder and bowels. That night, a heavy rainstorm struck, washing away our house. In agony, I struggled to retrieve that broken wooden boat and had just placed my young daughter on it. My husband then carried his good friend on his back and forced me and my daughter off the boat. My daughter and I struggled in the flood, ultimately meeting an unfortunate end. In this life, I will no longer be the woman standing behind him. Let him bear the consequences of the car accident on his own too. The fruit shop hadn't even started business yet, and he had already spent several days' earnings. Tired, my daughter and I could only drink plain boiled water to stave off hunger. I asked him for money to buy groceries and cook. He looked at me with disdain, his nose not a nose and his eyes not eyes. I just gave you 200 the other day, and now you're asking for money again. What did you spend it on? In my past life, I would have definitely gone through every expense with him in detail, but now, I just smiled and said, old Zhang's child had a fever yesterday, so I lent him 100. Who would have thought? He snorted and said, are you stupid? If someone asks to borrow money, you just lend it. Don't you know what the situation at home is like? So, he also knew that the family's financial situation was not good, but in his previous life, he would rather throw money at outsiders than spare a thought for us, his wife and daughter. He hadn't finished venting his anger at me when old man Lu from the apartment upstairs came down to buy fruit, straight toward my husband. The kid has a cold, Xiao Xiao, what kind of fruit can help ease it? My husband instantly changed expression like a Sichuan opera performer, more concerned about someone else's child being sick than his own daughter. Is it serious? Should I take him to the hospital? Old man Lu waved his hand. The fever isn't high, just 39 degrees, he'll be fine after lying down for a while. My husband, upon hearing this, jumped up in a panic and quickly filled a plastic bag with blueberries. He grabbed old man Lu and headed home. It's already 39 degrees, I'm taking him to the hospital. I just brought back fresh blueberries this morning, and before I could even weigh them to sell, they were all gone. I followed along, not forgetting to tell my husband, a child's cold is no small matter. I'm not comfortable with you going alone. My husband glared at me. We're not doing business at home anymore. Go back now. He also knew there was still business to attend to at home, but I stubbornly followed. Seeing that I didn't move, he kicked me in the waist. Can't you hear what I'm saying? I dodged, but he couldn't stop his momentum and fell down, taking old man Lu with him. There was a sharp crack of bones. Old man Lu's bones were broken. I pretended to help old man Lu, but my husband was faster. I scrambled up from the ground, picked him up, and ran to the hospital. The surgery cost over 20,000 yuan. Not only did my husband pay for it, but he also took care of the other person like his own son for half a month. He bought expensive nutritional supplements and treated valuable fruits as if they were free, sending them to the other person's home every day. Yet in my previous life, my daughter and I were writhing in pain on the floor, begging my husband to take care of us, asking him to call a car to take us to the hospital. My husband didn't even turn his head and rushed the old man Lu's grandson to the hospital. As soon as he left, the old man Lu's son and daughter-in-law came downstairs to mock me. Evil people will get their due punishment. You didn't do good deeds in the past, so now you're getting what you deserve. Seeing the couple who had come down specifically to find me again, before they could speak, I said confidently, Uncle, it was our fault that you fell. My husband and I have decided to give you our shop as compensation. This fruit shop was something my husband and I had earned through hard work, rising early and working late for 10 whole years before we got married. In my previous life, this shop did not belong to me. In this life, why not be a good person like my husband and give it to someone else? There is still 1 month until that heavy rainstorm, because my husband generously gave the shop to the couple. When the broken boat capsized and sank into the water, he was pulled up by the couple. When they saw me, they mocked me, saying the wicked are punished by heaven. Then, they watched helplessly as my daughter and I floated up and down in the floodwaters. I wonder how they would treat my husband, now that I've taken on the role of the good person in this world. When the storm comes, the couple immediately smiled broadly. Oh, how embarrassing. It's really no big deal. The shop my husband and I bought was a prime Location in the city center, rented out, and you can earn 40 to 50,000 a month. It's worth over $1 million if sold. No wonder they are so happy. The couple arrived with a fierce demeanor, but left feeling as if they were floating on air. After seeing the couple off, I was thinking about selling off all the fruit in the store so I could leave early with my daughter for another city, avoiding both debt and the heavy rainstorm. I was struggling to find an excuse to divorce my husband, right? Then, Yulan, the sister of my husband's close friend, came looking for me. As soon as he saw that his husband had gone to work as a caregiver and wasn't around, he wanted to leave on the spot. I stopped him. There's no need to go around the bush. You can tell me the same thing. My husband and I are straightforward and honest people. Hearing me say that, the other person immediately opened up and spoke frankly. My brother said your whole family are good people, so I came looking for you. It's not a big deal. I just want to have a local household registration, for benefits like getting a license plate and such. Both my husband and I are local residents, and we have been approached with offers before. Let me and my husband get a fake divorce, then each of us marry a client, wait until the other party has transferred their household registration, then my husband and I will remarry. 100,000 each time. The two of us together make 200,000. It's like doing nothing at all, just getting a certificate and receiving that money. I was afraid of getting into legal trouble, but my husband tried both soft and hard tactics on me, and I refused to budge. This time, I want to let him have his way. After all, his best friend is about to be in a car accident. The house at home is partly mine. In a previous life, my husband sold the house just to pay for his best friend's surgery. But the victim's side hasn't even settled the matter yet. Several family members of the victims have taken my husband to court, demanding $2 million in compensation, and I risked my life to stop it, ending up being executed just like my husband. I immediately agreed to let Yulan and my husband fake a divorce, and I didn't take a single cent from her. I even said generously, my brother's sister is my Fong Chua's sister. Family members, talking about money hurts feelings. She then walked away. Grateful and respectful toward me, she went back and prepared all kinds of documents, then came to find my husband, but I called my husband the other way around and said, you know that nice guy's sister, Yulan, she's really pretty and still a college student. She came to me, wanting to marry you just to get a local household registration. I turned her down. If the authorities ever investigate, we could all be prosecuted. My husband's furious voice came through the phone. If my brother's sister is my sister, then Zhao Yiming's sister is my sister too. If you won't help with such a small matter, what kind of person are you? I'll call her myself. I'm definitely going to help with this. I listened to the occasional coughs from old Lou on the other end of the line. I knew that whenever there were outsiders around, my husband would always be the steadfast good guy. I deliberately provoked him. Who knows if she faked the marriage? Maybe she actually has feelings for you and wants to marry you for real. I don't care. I just won't agree. I won't fake a divorce with you. I'll stay in the house with our daughter and see how you manage to fake a marriage with her. Mentioning the house, he thought I was afraid that after he faked a divorce, he wouldn't remarry me, so he reassured me. The house, shop, car, daughter, and savings all belong to you. What else do you have to worry about? I smiled secretly, pretending to be sad and tearful. I just won't agree. What if you run off with her? He dropped a sentence and quickly hung up. You wait. I'm going back now to sign the agreement with you. At this time, there was no cooling off period for divorce. If you wanted a divorce, as long as both parties agreed, you could get one at any time. By the time he returned, I had already gathered all the necessary documents for the divorce and placed them in the most conspicuous spot. For a month before the heavy rain, the weather was extremely hot and muggy. The highest temperature reached over 70 degrees. My daughter was fanning herself with a small electric fan, sweat streaming down her forehead. It soaked her bangs. The little vest she was wearing was also completely soaked. When I touched it, my daughter thoughtfully turned the small electric fan toward me. Mom, I'm not hot, I'll fan you. In my past life, my daughter was so considerate, enduring the scorching heat with me, yet drowning to death together with me. Looking at my innocent and pure daughter, in this life, I must protect her completely, and never let her suffer anymore. Seeing this, I turned off the electric fan blowing hot air, and for the first time in history, turned on the air conditioner at home. As soon as the air conditioner turned on, both my daughter and I felt instantly refreshed. When my husband came home and saw us enjoying the cool air, his face fell as if we owed him millions. 10 yuan an hour, over 200 a day. Do you have to be so wasteful? Don't you know how hard I work to earn money outside? I didn't respond, just held my daughter and stared at him with resentment. I knew it. You can't wait to divorce me. Now so you can marry that woman. Only after I reminded him did he remember the real reason he came back, but he wanted to turn off the air conditioner first and saw the remote control in my hand. He directly unplugged the air conditioner power cord and turned on the small electric fan that wasn't very useful. I was just about to plug the cord back in when Yulan arrived with her documents. She was wearing a solid light blue dress, elegant yet still lively. As soon as she entered the room, she kept fanning herself with her hand and said to my husband, "It's so hot, why don't you turn on the air conditioner at your place?" Just as I was opening it, you arrived. My husband was dazed for a moment, but quickly snapped back to reality and scurried over to plug it back in. She even snatched the remote from my hand and turned the temperature to 18 degrees. She went to the kitchen herself to serve tea and cut fruit for the guests. Right Lon saw my husband bustling in and out, and kept praising me as a lucky woman. I knew she was just being polite, but I just kept a cold face, said nothing, and took my daughter back to the room, slamming the door shut. Yulan was fidgeting anxiously. "What's wrong with sister-in-law? Did I come at a bad time?" My husband kindly handed her a toothpick and gently guided her to sit on the sofa. "It's nothing, she's just having her usual episode, can't stand seeing others happy." Through the door crack, I saw my husband gazing at her with deep affection. Indeed, scholars naturally possess an innate nobility, stand out from the crowd. Compared to her, I'm like a cabbage, common and everywhere. Her husband is obsessed with her demeanor, which is perfectly normal, right? Lon didn't rush to eat. She spread the documents she had brought on the table, and her husband knocked on the door asking for my ID. "Everyone is already here, what are you throwing a tantrum for? Hurry up and show the certificate, get things done for them." The slower I moved, the more anxious and agitated he became. He grabbed the documents I had left at the entrance and forcibly dragged me to the Civil Affairs Bureau to file for divorce. Like a dog biting his butt from behind, he divorced me in one swift move. It completely chilled my heart. When it comes to doing something good for others, he never hesitates at all. I didn't want the car in the agreement, only taking the house, the shop, and the few $100,000 in savings, along with custody of our daughter. I also added a clause stating that if anything happened to the borrowed car, I would bear no responsibility after the divorce. My husband didn't even look at it, just signed his name with a flourish. I held the green booklet, pressing down the corners of my mouth hard, just to put on an angry expression and look at him, but he didn't even glance at me, going off with someone else to get their marriage certificate. As soon as I got back, I quickly packed my bags, put the house up for sale, and moved with my daughter into an air-conditioned room 5. My husband had just gotten the marriage certificate with Yulan when her brother was involved in a car accident. The car, with 4 or 5 passengers inside, flipped over and fell off the bridge. The reason was that Yulan's brother tried to overtake another vehicle, but the other driver didn't let him pass. He swerved to avoid the other car, but then a large truck came head-on. The 2 cars collided, and he couldn't handle the other party, so he naturally flipped off the bridge. News reports stated that there was 1 injured and 5 dead. Upon hearing the news, my husband immediately called me. "Right, Lan's family had an accident. Sell the house quickly and come to the hospital to pay for the surgery." I replied with a "okay." He didn't pay much attention, hung up the phone, and continued running up and down the hospital corridors. The victim's family came to the hospital and demanded an explanation from Yulan's brother. Yulan and her parents and sister-in-law pushed her husband out. "He is the car owner. If you have any issues, talk to him." The husband on the screen showed no sign of displeasure at all, repeatedly apologizing to the deceased's family, and he promised to pay every penny of the compensation that was due, but he didn't know that lending out a car that was involved in a fatal accident constitutes a public prosecution case, and he knew that the borrower did not have a driver's license, yet still lent the vehicle, resulting in an accident. He bears primary criminal responsibility for this car accident. He is also liable for civil compensation. In the comments, everyone praised the husband as a righteous and good person. A buddy caused such a major accident while borrowing a car, yet he didn't cut ties with his friend, truly a real friend. Many others also feel indignant on his behalf, believing the country's laws are unjust. Lending a car out of goodwill ended up causing trouble. Makes you think twice about doing good deeds in the future. I couldn't help but laugh when I saw it. My daughter saw me smiling and kissed me on the face. "Mom, I love you." I leaned my head against hers. "Mommy loves you too." In this life, I not only divorced him, I managed to get the house and the remaining savings from home. Even my daughter is by my side. I don't want to stay in this city for even a second longer. The moment I received the money for the house, I took my daughter and flew to the metropolis to settle down, and the city where I am registered as a resident, being located near rivers, experiences high Tides whenever it rains. The old houses in the countryside are situated at low elevations, and during the annual plum rain season, they are repeatedly flooded. When a heavy downpour hits, people inside their homes are inevitably trapped in the middle of the water. With the storm coming with such ferocity, people have no time to react before being swept away by the floodwaters. The rainstorm continues without stopping, making rescue efforts impossible. Here in the Magic City, it's all high-rise buildings. A nationwide heavy rainstorm lasted for 7 days and 7 nights, flooding the ground, but those living in high-rise buildings were completely unaffected. As long as you have enough daily supplies and buy an alcohol stove, you can easily get through these 7 days. You can even appreciate the spectacular natural phenomena brought by this heavy rainstorm. I rented a high-quality apartment in a high-rise building. Then I placed an order from an online supermarket, buying my daughter's favorite mantis shrimp, durian millefeuille cake, honey roasted chicken. A box of snacks priced at 59 yuan was added to the shopping cart without hesitation. In just 1 second, the heavy rain brought low temperatures. I also ordered several hot pot platters until the 3-door refrigerator was packed full for daily necessities like oil, grains, rice, and flour. I took advantage of promotions to buy dozens of bags at a time. After all, after heavy rain, transportation becomes inconvenient, and shipping costs increase. It is inevitable that daily necessities will see price hikes. I have also stockpiled over 100 barrels of mineral water. I'm just worried about drinking dirty water after the heavy rain, which could cause health issues. This is just my guess, because in my previous life, I didn't live long enough to see what happened after the rainstorm. After finishing all that, before the rainstorm arrived, I went to the wholesale market and bought a large quantity of fruits and vegetables, storing them in a rented waterproof and moisture-proof cold storage. I only brought a small portion of the fruits and vegetables back to the rental house to enjoy with my daughter over these 7 days. This way, after the rainstorm, my daughter and I wouldn't struggle due to a lack of money. 6. My daughter and I were enjoying frozen watermelon and cooling drinks, savoring the calm before the storm. My husband was over there, overwhelmed and frantic, because he had been waiting in vain for me to give him the house payment to cover his buddy's surgery fees. His best friend's parents and sister-in-law knelt down, forcing him to come back and sell the house. He returned to the house where we got married, but the key wouldn't open the door. He knocked on the door, and a stranger answered. Only then did he learn that I had already sold the house long ago. He called me, and I deliberately turned off my phone. Yulan was urging him urgently by his side, so he had no choice but to run to the shop, planning to sell it first to ease the situation. But when he arrived at the shop, the people inside had already been replaced by Uncle Lu's son and daughter-in-law. When he brought up selling the shop, the couple looked surprised. Didn't you give us the store? What, are you trying to weasel out of it? My dad is still sick. My husband was completely stunned, and Yulan immediately burst into tears, pushing him away. You gave the shop away. What will my brother do? The couple didn't know Yulan and glanced at her sideways. Who are you? They've already given us the shop. What's it got to do with your brother? Brother Zhao, sister-in-law is a good person. Don't cause trouble for her. Yulan couldn't stand the way they looked at her. He and I are both married, so why isn't it my brother's business? Say something. What about my brother? If we don't pay the surgery fee soon, my brother will die. The couple stared at the husband. You caused our family's elder to break his bones. This shop was promised to us. On one side is a complete stranger with no relation, on the other side is a close friend who is now a relative by marriage. The husband's scale once again tips toward the unrelated stranger, dragging the unwilling Yulan away. I'll figure out a way to handle the money. His idea was to call me and ask me to selflessly contribute those hundreds of thousands in savings. I never turned my phone on. He had no choice but to call his parents and ask them for money. His parents were already lucky if they didn't ask him for money. As soon as he called to borrow money, they started cursing. Why didn't you transfer the 2,000 yuan this month? How dare you ask us for money? You're just a burden to us. After saying that, they slammed the phone down, still not forgetting to mention the money transfer. By the way, there's a happy event in the village this month, so tell him to send another 20 or 30,000 back. My husband had been holding in his anger these past few days, unable to find me and our daughter, with no outlet for his frustration. Now that he's caught up with his parents, he's letting it all out. He called them again. Am I not your son? I give you 2,000 every month, 24,000 a year. During holidays and festivals, it's another 30 to 40,000. In total, it adds up to a solid 300,000 a year, over 10 years. That's 3 million. I'm telling you, if you don't give me this money, I can go back and beat you to death." Believe it or not, his parents were so frightened that they immediately paid the money, but how could such a small amount be enough? In her previous life, the over 2 million yuan obtained from selling the house was all spent on Yulan's brother. Her parents were determined to install the most expensive stent for Yulan's brother, even if it meant death. Even if he doesn't have much time left, let him catch his breath and hold on until the end. The responsibility of taking care of him still falls on me. Let him suffer this hardship himself. The heavy rainstorm is about to arrive. I wonder at that moment, without me there, whether he would save himself or his buddy. 7. When the husband was informed that public prosecution had been filed, he was completely stunned. Even more stunned was Yulan. After obtaining a local household registration through a sham marriage with her husband, she is now preparing to file for divorce. On the surface, she remains the legal wife of her husband. They are required to jointly bear the compensation for the car accident, and her husband is highly likely to be sentenced, so most of the civil compensation fell on her. The deceased's family couldn't get compensation, so they came to her to make a scene. In the previous life, she clearly knew her brother's character, yet she still led the way in making trouble with me, demanding money. She pushed her brother into my home. Now she should taste this feeling too. In front of her parents, my husband brought her brother into the house. Her parents thought my husband, a grown man, wasn't careful enough in taking care of his son. At the instigation of her sister-in-law, they also sent Yulan over to help. As long as we don't sleep in the same room, nothing will happen. Not to mention her brother was watching from the side. The old house in the countryside has 3 bedrooms, which is enough for them to live in. On the very first day she arrived, Yulan couldn't stand it and wanted to leave. My husband finally managed to talk me out of it. When I brought it up again, he raised his fist. He even entered my room at night when I resisted. In the middle of the night, a heavy downpour flooded all the nearby houses. Without me, they could only grab the trees drifting by, floating and sinking in the flood. Unfortunately, a single tree could carry only a limited number of people. Yulan clung tightly to the tree trunk, refusing to lend a hand to anyone. Her husband could only carry his brother, who had lost his lower limbs, and barely managed to grab the tree trunk. Take a deep breath. Unlike when I was there, dragging him and his buddies onto the boat, not letting them suffer a bit from the flood. My husband's body was soaked in the water all night, struggling until dawn, with the heavy rain still not letting up. He simply couldn't endure it any longer. Yuxiang, fearing death, tightly squeezed his neck. It became even more unbearable for him, not to mention the various obstacles underwater, and the damage inflicted on his body as he was carried along by the floodwaters. A person immersed in cold water will experience reduced pain. The body will gradually become numb to survive. The husband chose to save himself this time, abandoning his friend, but his friend wasn't foolish either. When he urged him to let go and let him climb onto the log, he refused to budge. "I have no legs. If I can't hold on, I'll die. You're my good brother. You can't abandon loyalty. Besides, you're half responsible for my legs. If you had advised me back then, would I have gotten into this accident?" My husband told Yulan to hold her brother tightly. Yulan turned her face away, refusing to look at them. When she was being mistreated by her husband, she told her brother about it, but her brother didn't believe her husband was such a bad person. He even scolded her for slandering him, saying she was ruining her husband's good reputation. Husband had no choice but to use his hands to pry open his friend's arm, before the other person could do anything. He himself fainted and sank into the water. Yuxiang shouted for a long time, but her husband didn't respond. Seeing that she was about to sink into the flood along with her husband, he yelled for his sister to pull him up. When there was no response from the other side, he released his grip on his husband's neck and reached for the wood. At that very moment, his husband leaped up, threw him off, grabbed the tree trunk himself, and climbed up as well. Yuxiang was swept away by the flood, still cursing her husband for being disloyal. Watching her drift away, her husband let out a long sigh of relief. Yuxiang's parents, like Yulan, believed it was the husband's fault. They not only demanded that the husband take care of Yuxiang but also insisted he earn money to support Yuxiang's wife and children. Her husband, unable to save face, agreed. After Yuxiang's death, Yulan became his wife again. That is to say, she became family, and for family, there's no need to be as polite and courteous as one would be to outsiders. 8. After drifting for a while, my husband's urge to be a good person flared up again. We encountered a mother and her 2 children calling for help. Without a second thought, he wanted to bring them onto that small section of tree trunk. Yulan stopped him. He cursed at Yulan. "We're all neighbors and relatives. What's wrong with helping out? Who doesn't have something come up sometimes and needs to ask for help from others? I'm doing this to accumulate blessings for our family. Why can't you understand?" Yulan was momentarily stunned. "Floods don't even save themselves, yet you go to rescue others. If you want to die, don't drag me down with you." "Okay, I don't want to end up dead like my brother because of you," the mother and her two sons pleaded desperately. "We're very light, not heavy at all." My husband's face darkened, and he turned to scold me. "You're always quick to eat, but when it comes to saving someone, why is it so difficult? Move aside. I, Zhao Yiming, am sitting here as the good guy today." He was strong, but Yulan, desperate to save her life, used all her strength, gripping the tree trunk tightly without letting go. Her husband then pounded her head fiercely. The heavy rain blurred her vision. Right, Lan didn't know whether her eyes were blurred by blood or by rain, so she reached up to wipe them, but her husband seized the moment and pushed her into the floodwaters. The mother and her two children quickly grabbed the tree trunk, hugging it tightly. The trunk was visibly sinking. When three pairs of eyes turned toward the husband in unison, he voluntarily rolled off the tree trunk, holding onto it with his hands while his body floated in the water as he moved forward. He then received 3 good person cards from the 3 of them. The heavy rain showed no signs of stopping. Instead, it grew even more intense. My daughter and I were cooking hot pot, leisurely enjoying the meal. My husband was soaking in the water, dizzy and starving until his eyes rolled back. He had spent most of his energy exercising with Yulan earlier in the night, then, escaping the heavy rain in the latter half of the night drained the rest of his strength, encountered the massive whirlpool of the flood again. To save their lives, the mother and her 2 children had their husband, who was not very strong, push them toward a pile of debris floating ahead, and to survive, the husband pushed them with all his remaining strength until they reached the floating debris. They grabbed a few pieces of foam board, assembled them into a makeshift raft, and caught their breath. It's only the first day of the heavy rainstorm. They thought they could just stay here and wait for rescue. In fact, they didn't know that it was raining heavily all over the world. The rescuers themselves were in danger, so how could they come to their aid in time? The husband, starving, picked up a pear from the water and started eating it. It just so happened that this area had many pear trees. Enough to fill his stomach, but not enough to stop the hunger. My husband, being the warm-hearted soul he is, heard someone say they wanted to eat the cake floating in the distance. He volunteered to paddle over and fetch it for them. Along the way, he encountered several whirlpools and nearly got swept in. Yet, my husband remains unrepentant, believed that good deeds bring good rewards. He even gave up his own foam board for the father and son standing on the treetop in the distance to sit on. He held onto the treetop himself, waiting for the heavy rain to stop. All the edible things salvaged from the floodwaters had been eaten. The heavy rain continued, pouring down like the sky had opened its mouth wide. The water level was rising. My husband called me through the storm, but in the midst of the downpour, there was no signal. Looking around, I saw endless floods stretching as far as the eye could see. In my previous life, I was also overwhelmed by such a sight. Feeling deep despair, I begged him to take our daughter to the city for safety, for the sake of our child. Does he now feel the helplessness I felt back then? Before the next, larger wave of flooding arrives, he seized the moment and jumped onto a floating tree that had been occupied by small animals. The chickens and ducks did not leave just because they were frightened. In the face of the flood, everyone's life is equal, but for humans, one's own life is what truly matters. The husband, driven by hunger, grabbed a live chicken, twisted its neck, plucked its feathers, and shoved it into his mouth, and these chickens and ducks, in order to survive, still stood on the floating tree. 9. My husband not only eats these living creatures for survival himself, when he encounters others whose eyes are gleaming with hunger, he generously shares them to eat. He has received one good person card after another. He endured until the 3rd day of the heavy rain. People who eat raw meat will naturally suffer from stomachaches. Many people, because of his generosity, ended up clutching their stomachs in agony, nearly dying. Combined with the cold weather brought by the heavy rain, people shivered from the chill. Most of those who drifted down the river with their husbands died. The remaining people who didn't die questioned their husbands as wives/mothers. Did you deliberately give us raw meat to eat, trying to kill us? Are you a murderer? The husband bowed and explained, I really didn't know that eating raw meat could kill someone. I ate it too. What else could we do? We couldn't just starve. People who are furious don't listen to reason. I think you did it on purpose. The heavy rain killed, leaving no evidence at all. Don't let the murderer escape. They arrested the husband and jointly shoved him into the floodwaters. Because of this endless downpour, everyone's heart felt heavy. They desperately need a reason to vent, to help themselves endure the disaster at hand. Husband is stuck in the flood, still not understanding. Why do these people's faces change so suddenly? Not a shred of human decency. He was submerged in the floodwaters, desperately reaching out for someone to pull him up. He kept explaining to people that he wasn't a murderer. Everyone stood by coldly, watching him rise and sink in the floodwaters. Floodwater choked into his lungs, and he coughed violently. Another mouthful of floodwater choked him again. Along with the water, microbes from the floodwater also entered, especially a common parasite here, the horsehair worm, but he couldn't care less about that. Instinct drove him to grab onto anything that floated. At this moment, he still cared too much about his pride, reaching for the unused floating objects. Meanwhile, I stayed at home, quietly enjoying the eerie weather formed by the heavy rainstorm with my daughter, listening to the sound of rain. I fell into a deep sleep. He could only cling to anything he could grasp. Struggling to survive in the heavy rain at night, he couldn't even close his eyes for a moment. He was afraid that with the slightest carelessness, he would sink into the floodwaters. On the 5th day of the torrential rain, he was so exhausted that his eyelids were drooping. Hungry and thirsty, he drank a mouthful of rainwater mixed with floodwater, waiting hopelessly for the flood to pass. On the 6th day, the aftereffects of drinking too much floodwater began to show. He started experiencing diarrhea and vomiting. His body, due to hypothermia, grew increasingly feverish. He fell into the floodwaters, unconscious, but he was lucky. Swept into the city by the flood, he encountered a couple who had come out in a boat to rescue people after the heavy rain stopped. The couple turned him over and saw that it was him. He woke him up and asked, "Where's your wife?" Husband, unguarded, replied directly, "It fell into the flood. I don't know if it's still alive." They exchanged a glance. The man directly pushed his husband's head into the water until no more bubbles rose to the surface. Then they rowed away. Their official statement was, "My husband abandoned his wife and daughter for someone outside, and even heaven couldn't stand his actions, so it took him away." Unlike in the previous life, where upon seeing the husband and the other person capsized, they were immediately pulled onto the boat and given clothes and food. In reality, they did this for the sake of the shop. The husband didn't go to ask for the shop back, but Yulon did, not just once. It made the couple anxious, and they repeatedly came to me to confirm whether I had given them the shop. Of course, I said yes and even wrote them a handwritten guarantee, but it's not impossible that my husband, in a moment of desperation, might regret it after being influenced by pillow talk. The couple kept this matter in their hearts. This time, taking advantage of this rare opportunity, they decided to settle it once and for all. After the heavy rain stopped, the country mobilized a large number of personnel and resources to begin rescue operations, but this heavy downpour lasted too long. Many people in the heavy rain could not withstand the harm caused by hypothermia and died in the storm. Those who survived for 3 days were few, not to mention those who survived for more than 7 days. It was basically a miracle. Yolan's family lost both their son and daughter and wanted to come cause trouble with me, demanding that I support them. Before they could come find me, they were blocked in their home by the families of other victims. Her husband died, and the 7-year prison sentence from the public prosecution ended with his death. However, the civil compensation would not be terminated because of his death. Since I had already divorced him before the incident, the liability for compensation fell on him. The money he had given to Yolan's family flowed out again in this way. Yolan's parents wanted to sue me to reclaim the property and shop belonging to her husband. Also, at the time of borrowing the car, my husband and I were not yet divorced. When I presented the divorce agreement, the court ruled that I did not need to make any compensation. As early as when we registered the divorce and signed the agreement, I had added this additional clause, but my husband, just wanting to help someone get things done sooner, didn't even bother to read the agreement. Right. Lan's parents slunk back home. Turning around, I sold the shop I had given to the couple. The couple took the guarantee letter and recording I had written and sued me in court, but they didn't immediately come to me to handle the property transfer procedures, so the verbal transfer I gave is not effective. They watched me and my daughter die in their previous life, and now my husband is gone too. Why should I give them a good face anymore? After getting back what I deserved, I sent my daughter to the best kindergarten. I started my old profession again. I paid for my own social security, aiming to buy a home in Shanghai within 5 years, before the heavy rain. The fruits and vegetables I had stored brought me a considerable income. With the 1.5 million from selling the shop, I bought a 50 square meter store in Shanghai. Life has returned to the right track. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My sister-in-law was stabbed in the heart and rushed into the operating room for emergency surgery. My husband, a master cardiac surgeon, was at the beach collecting seashells with his first love. I called him countless times, begging him to come back and save his sister. He impatiently said, "Susan, how dare you curse my sister? You're so vicious. Why don't you just die?" He hung up the phone and blocked the number. In the end, the sister-in-law passed away from her illness. The entire family blamed me for the sister-in-law's death. They surrounded me, beat me severely, broke my arms and legs, and threw me into the deep mountains. I desperately cried for help. Someone actually came, but he didn't come to save me. He came to kill me. Dozens of stabs pierced my body, and I died in agony and despair. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my sister-in-law was murdered. Murder, murder. The screams of passers-by echoed in my ears, growing louder and louder. Onlookers rushed toward the scene of the incident. Only I stood as if nailed to the spot, trembling all over. The excruciating pain of dozens of knives stabbing into my body felt so real, and it reminded me, Susan, have been reborn. In my previous life, I had joined the onlookers to see what the commotion was about, only to discover that the victim was my sister-in-law. She lay in a pool of blood, fighting for her life. I frantically called an ambulance, rushed her into the operating room, and ran around taking care of everything, but in the end, my sister-in-law still died. However, my husband's family blamed her death on me. The whole family surrounded me with fierce expressions, shouting insults. Susan, you poisonous woman, you killed my sister, beat her to death, beat this jinx to death. They threw punches and kicks, pinned me to the ground, and beat me senseless, breaking my arms and legs before throwing me into the deep mountains to be devoured by wolves. I desperately cried for help, but instead, a stranger appeared, pulled out a knife, and stabbed me repeatedly, leaving me to die in despair. In this life, I won't meddle in such affairs. I turned around abruptly, going against the flow of people, and headed straight to the vegetable market. After buying the groceries, I returned home. As soon as I opened the door, I was met with the mean face of my mother-in-law. Mary, where the hell have you been? Buying groceries as slow as a turtle. She narrowed her triangular eyes and pointed at the mountain of dishes piled in the sink. What use is a daughter-in-law like you, standing there like a door god? Hurry up and wash the dishes. Do you expect an old woman like me to serve you? I lowered my head, hiding the surging hatred in my eyes, my voice as gentle as a little lamb. Mom, please don't be angry. I'll go wash them right away. I had just walked into the kitchen when my mother-in-law's phone rang. Hello, who is it? She answered impatiently. The next second, her voice suddenly rose sharply, as if it could pierce through the ceiling. What did you say? My daughter is in the hospital being resuscitated. The phone clattered to the floor with a sharp thud, as if all the strength had been drained from her body. I sneered inwardly but pretended to be completely unaware, rushing out to ask, Mom, what happened? You're scaring me. Mary's face turned as pale as paper, her lips trembling as she grabbed my hand, her nails digging almost painfully into my flesh. Susan, quick, take me to the hospital. Bonnie, something's happened to Bonnie. I rushed to the hospital with Mary as quickly as possible. This is the hospital where my husband Lucas works. At the entrance of the operating room, a nurse hurriedly ran out and asked, who is the family of Bonnie Lincoln? The patient has lost too much blood, and the knife wound is too close to the heart. She must undergo surgery immediately. Come and sign the consent form. Mary's legs gave way, and she nearly collapsed to the ground, but I caught her just in time. With trembling hands, she signed the document, her voice choked with tears as she pleaded, Please, I beg you, you must save my daughter. She's only in her 20s. Mom, don't panic. I reminded her, isn't Lucas the best cardiac surgeon in the entire city? If he performs this surgery, Bonnie's heart will surely be perfectly fine. I took out my phone, pretending to make a call. You can't call. She was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, instantly bristling, and made a grab for my phone, because she knew full well that Lucas wasn't at the hospital. He was at the beach with his beloved Lily, picking up seashells. Before leaving, Lucas had reminded her not to let anyone disturb their sweet, romantic time together. With a flick of my wrist, I deftly avoided her attempt to snatch it. Why can't I hit it? I widened my eyes, my face full of innocence and confusion. Mom, don't you want Bonnie's surgery to go smoothly? This is a matter of life and death. As soon as I dropped that heavy accusation, Mary's face instantly turned as red as liver. Stop cursing. Bonnie here, I just think Bonnie's condition might not require Lucas to step in personally. She stammered, searching for excuses, her eyes darting around, not daring to look at me. As soon as she finished speaking, the door to the operating room opened again. Another young nurse rushed out anxiously. It's bad. The tip of the knife has penetrated too deep into the heart. Our head doctor says that for such a complex surgery, only Dr. Lucas in the entire hospital can handle it. The nurse's gaze swept over us, as if she had found a lifeline. You're Dr. Lincoln's family, right? Get him to stop his vacation and come back immediately for the surgery. I feigned shock, looking at the nurse with an expression of disbelief. What? Vacation? Nurse, are you mistaken? How could I not know if my husband is on leave? He told me just last night that the department is too busy, and he has to work several consecutive overtime shifts and can't come home. The nurse was also stunned, looking completely bewildered. We're not sure about the details, but the leave request was approved by the head of the department. In any case, you need to contact Dr. Lincoln immediately. The patient can't wait any longer, any further delay and it might be too late to save them. A loud boom echoed. Mary's mind seemed to explode. Her lips instantly turned pale, and her body swayed unsteadily, looking as if she was about to faint. I quickly supported her, my tone filled with urgency. Mom, don't panic, I'll call Lucas right away. In front of everyone, I dialed Lucas's phone number once, twice, 3 times. I dialed 10 times in a row, but all I ever heard from the receiver was that cold, "The number you have dialed is not answering." Of course, it couldn't connect. Lucas had already blocked me long ago to keep me from disturbing his wonderful time with Lily. I remember clearly, in my past life, I used my own phone to make a total of 49 calls. In the end, I had to borrow a nurse's phone to finally get through. On the other end of the line, I was crying and begging him to come back and save his own sister. He impatiently said to me, "Susan, you hate Lily and resent me for bringing her to the beach for a date. You even cursed my sister, wishing her to die soon. How vicious you are. Why don't you just die yourself?" He hung up the phone. After that, no matter whose phone I used to call him, he never answered again. Just like that, Bonnie Lincoln missed the best opportunity for rescue, and she died. Yet their entire family blamed her death on me. The reason is that I'm jealous and possessive, which misled Lucas and prevented him from returning in time. So the one who caused Bonnie Lincoln's death is me. Recalling the frustrating scenes from my past life, I clenched my hands tightly, struggling to control my grief and anger. "Honey, where are you? Please answer the phone." I pretended to be so anxious that tears were about to fall. Mary looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt and evasion, as she stubbornly defended her son. "Lucas might be busy with other important matters. If you can't get through, just try again later." At a time like this, she's still covering up the fact that Lucas is cheating. I truly feel sorry for Bonnie Lincoln, who is fighting for her life in the operating room. At that moment, a series of hurried footsteps echoed from the end of the corridor. "Bonnie, what's wrong with my precious granddaughter?" My father-in-law, David Lincoln, was supporting the elderly Mrs. Lincoln, who is over 70, as they rushed over with anxious expressions. "Where's Lucas? Has he already gone in to save Bonnie?" Old Mrs. Lincoln doted on Bonnie Lincoln because Bonnie looked exactly like her when she was young. Don't be fooled by her being over 70. In her previous life, when she hit me, her strength was terrifying. She broke 2 canes in the process. That kind of bone-deep pain is still fresh in my memory. In this life, I will never let her whole family dump this baseless blame on me again. I made a bitter face, my eyes reddening. "Grandma, Lucas told me he had to work overtime, but I just asked the nurse. He's not at the hospital at all, and he's not in the operating room either. I don't know where he is." "What do you mean you don't know? What kind of wife are you? If you don't know, can't you call and ask?" she scolded while pointing her cane at the tip of my nose, looking as if she wanted to jab it right into my forehead. "Grandma, it's not that I didn't call." I looked at Mary with a pitiful expression. "Mom, you saw it too, right? I just called 10 times in a row, and he didn't answer a single one." Mary lowered her head, twisting the corner of her clothes nervously, and nodded guiltily. Yes, Susan has been calling." The old lady narrowed her eyes and glared at me. "Then it must be your fault. You must have upset him, which is why he's not answering your calls. Try using your mother-in-law's phone and see if he dares to hang up." Mary was truly panicked this time. Her hand trembled slightly as she handed me the phone. "Hurry up and dial," the old lady urged. I took a deep breath and, in front of everyone, dialed that familiar yet unfamiliar number and put it on speakerphone. After 2 rings, the other side picked up immediately. "Mom, what's up? Didn't we agree not to call me randomly?" Lucas's voice was lazy, mixed with the sounds of sea breeze and waves. I took a deep breath and cried out in a trembling, tearful voice, "Husband, it's me, Susan." My words were abruptly cut off by his furious roar. "Are you insane? Using your own phone to call wasn't enough. You actually dared to steal my mom's phone to call me. Have you lost your mind? Don't you know I'm extremely busy?" "No, honey, listen to me. Bonnie is dying. She was stabbed, and you're the only one in the entire hospital who can save her with surgery. Please come back quickly." I was so frantic that my voice cracked. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, then a delicate and affected female voice sounded, "Lucas, I think you should go back. Susan is jealous and even lied to curse Bonnie just to get you to return. I can collect shells by the seaside alone. You don't need to accompany me. It's Lily." I was trembling with anger, my nails digging deep into my palms. "I'm not lying, Lily. Shut up. Bonnie is really in the operating room. Lucas, I'm begging you. Please come back. Bonnie needs you. Susan, that's enough." Lucas's furious voice exploded once again. "There's a limit to jealousy, too. Trick me into coming back. You'd even make up such a lie and curse my own sister. Aren't you afraid of karma? Stop bothering me. I'm really busy. If you mess up my campaign for department head, I'll make sure you suffer. Beep, beep, beep. He hastily hung up the phone. I held my phone, tears falling in large drops as my gaze swept over the three elders of the Lincoln family. Their faces all showed the same shock, embarrassment, and disbelief. Just then, the door to the operating room was pushed open again. The nurse's voice was more urgent than ever before, almost shouting, "Has Dr. Lincoln been reached yet? The patient's heart rate is continuously dropping, and the blood pressure can't stabilize. The patient really can't wait any longer." Boom. Old Mrs. Lincoln nearly fainted. She snatched the phone from Mary's hand and yelled at her, "Call. You call him yourself." Mary frantically dialed the number, and the phone rang several times before it was finally answered. Lucas's voice, colder than ice and more venomous than poison, once again came through the speakerphone. "Susan, what the hell do you want? If you're that bored, just go die, hanging, drinking pesticide. There are plenty of ways to kill yourself. Don't bother me." Mary's face instantly drained of all color. Before he could hang up, she mustered every ounce of her strength and let out a piercing scream. "Lucas, don't hang up. It's your mom. Come back quickly. Your sister was stabbed in the heart by some bastard and is in critical condition. The doctor said only you can save her. Please come back." On the other end of the phone, there was dead silence. It took a full 5 seconds before Lucas's voice was heard again. "Mom, why are you getting involved in this mess too? I told you long ago. Susan is jealous. She'll say any lie to trick me into going back. Don't be fooled by her." Mary's tears fell with a patter, her voice choked with desperate sobs. "It's not fake. It's true. Bonnie is lying on the operating table right now. The doctor said only your skills can save her life. Please, I'm begging you, come back quickly." The other end of the phone fell silent for a few seconds. The Lincoln family's eyes were fixed on the phone screen, waiting anxiously for his response. But before hope could take root, a delicate, soft female voice suddenly rang out. "Lucas, it hurts so much. My foot seems to have been pinched by a crab claw, and it's bleeding. I need you to blow on it." Lucas's tone instantly became extremely urgent. "Lily, don't be afraid. I'm coming." He only threw out one sentence into the phone. "Mom, stop going along with Susan's nonsense. She just wants to trick me into coming back." Then he hung up the phone without hesitation. Mary stood frozen, holding her phone, her hands trembling uncontrollably, her nails dug deep into her palms, but she didn't even notice. David Lincoln finally couldn't take it anymore. A vein throbbed at his temple as he dialed Lucas's number with his own phone and roared with all his might, "You bastard, your sister is dying. Didn't you hear? Get back here right now and perform the surgery." His roar nearly shattered the glass windows in the hospital corridor. On the other end of the phone was a voice so suppressed, impatient, and furious. "Dad, how can you believe Susan's nonsense too? She's just bored and asking for trouble." I continued to feign grievance, silently shedding tears as I glanced at Grandma Lincoln. Her face was livid, her hand gripping the cane so tightly it seemed as if she might snap it in two at any moment. "My dear grandson," the old lady wailed into the speaker, "Grandma is begging you. Grandma is kowtowing to you. Please come back and save your sister." Yet the phone remained cold and indifferent. "Grandma, it's not that I don't want to come back, but I've been drinking and can't drive right now. I promise you, I'll rush back as soon as the alcohol wears off." "All right, I won't say more." Lily hurt her foot. "I need to check on her first." Beep beep, the dial tone tore their hopes to shreds. Even more despair arrived. The red light in the operating room had just turned off. The lead surgeon removed his mask and said helplessly and gravely, "I'm sorry, we've done all we could. The patient passed away at X o'clock on X month, X day, X year. This is the death certificate. Please sign for it." Boom. Old Mrs. Lincoln fainted and collapsed on the spot. The terrified young nurse hurriedly caught her. Mary frantically threw herself beside the stretcher, clutching her daughter's cold, stiff body tightly as she burst into loud sobs. David Lincoln staggered back 2 steps and collapsed onto a bench, his eyes fixed and his lips deathly pale. "What about me?" Of course, she had to keep up the act, crying more miserably than anyone else. Lucas had finally returned the day after Bonnie Lincoln's death. Returning with Lily, the home was set up with a mourning hall, solemn black and white elegiac couplets, and the sorrowful faces of relatives and friends. As soon as Lucas entered, what filled his eyes was not guilt, not grief, but furious anger. "Susan, have you had enough?" He rushed over, raised his hand, and slapped me hard across the face with a resounding smack. "To trick me into coming back, you actually teamed up with the whole family to curse my sister to death and even set up this fake memorial. How could you be so vicious?" The burning pain spread across my cheek, but I didn't cry, nor did I dodge, but looked at him coldly, and instead gave him 2 hard slaps. 2 slaps were far from enough to vent my anger. I wished I could just beat him to death, but now is not the time. I pointed at the center of the funeral hall, at Bonnie Lincoln's portrait and urn. My voice was slow and deliberate. Open your damn eyes and look clearly. Can even death photos and ashes be faked? Lucas covered his instantly swollen face, staring in disbelief at the black and white photo, his pupils contracting violently. He staggered, muttering repeatedly under his breath, "How could it be? How is it possible? Bonnie, you must be lying to me. Bonnie isn't dead. She can't be." He seemed to have gone mad, unwilling to accept this reality. Just then, Lily, who was standing beside him, spoke softly. Her voice was not loud, but it clearly reached everyone's ears. "Lucas, don't get worked up. The memorial photo might have been photoshopped." She paused, glancing meaningfully at the urn. "As for the ashes, who knows? Maybe it's just flour inside." Susan really went to great lengths to get you to come back. This sentence instantly drove Lucas into a frenzy. Yes, Lily is right. It must be flour. He rushed over and snatched the urn. Amid everyone's terrified screams, he unscrewed the lid and flung the ashes inside out. "It's all fucking fake. Susan, you poisonous woman." Gray-white powder drifted down from the air and settled on the ground. Time stood still at that moment. The next second, mother-in-law Mary let out a piercing scream. "Ah, my daughter, old Mrs. Lincoln rolled her eyes and once again fainted from sheer rage. David Lincoln's eyes turned bloodshot. He snatched the cane the old lady had dropped on the floor and, like a madman, began whipping Lucas fiercely on the back. "I'll beat you to death, you beast. That was your own sister's ashes. How could you scatter them like that? How did the Lincoln family produce such a heartless monster like you?" The relatives and friends who had come to pay their respects were also in an uproar, pointing at Lucas and cursing him vehemently. "How vicious, even scattering your own sister's ashes. Is this still human? It's worse than an animal." Lucas dodged his father's blows in a sorry state, still screaming hysterically, "I don't believe it. You're all lying to me. My sister isn't dead." I watched the farce coldly and threw Bonnie Lincoln's death certificate in his face. "This is Bonnie's death certificate, signed by the head of your cardiothoracic surgery department. This is stamped with the exclusive death certificate seal of your hospital. I, Susan, don't have the ability to steal a seal." After Lucas read every word on it, he was dumbfounded, his legs went weak, and he collapsed to the ground. He believed it. Bonnie Lincoln is really dead, but he didn't think it was his fault. He suddenly looked up, his bloodshot eyes glaring at me fiercely. "It's you, Susan. You're the one who killed my sister." He pointed at me, roaring hoarsely. "If it weren't for your constant lies and deception, misleading me, how could I not have come back? You jinx, you're the one who killed Bonnie. I'll kill you to accompany my sister in death." He scrambled up from the ground and lunged at me like a madman, trying to choke me. My eyes narrowed, and I raised my hand again. Smack, smack, 2 more crisp, sharp slaps to sober him up. "Fine, even if you're convinced I've been lying all along, what about your dad and your mom? They called you, saying Bonnie was dying, and you didn't even believe them." Even Grandma knelt on the ground, kowtowing and begging you to come back, yet you remained unmoved. You blocked everyone's numbers just so you could have a carefree, happy time with your white moonlight by the sea. Lucas, you're such a scumbag who abandons family for a woman and has rotten morals. You don't even deserve to be called a human. I took a deep breath and, in front of everyone, made a major decision. "Lucas, I want a divorce. In my past life, I didn't have the chance, but in this life, I don't want this rotten, stinking marriage for even one more day." Seeing this, Lily's eyes reddened, and she began her performance once again. She ran over and grabbed my hand, tears instantly welling up in her eyes. "Susan, don't act on impulse. It's all my fault. Please don't divorce Lucas because of me, or I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life. Lucas and I are really just ordinary friends. You mustn't misunderstand." I abruptly shook off her hand and slapped her twice in return. "Lily, stop pretending to be pitiful in front of me. If it weren't for you constantly stopping him on the phone, Lucas would have come back long ago. Bonnie wouldn't have died. You two despicable lovers are the ones who caused Bonnie's death." Lily fell to the ground, clutching her stomach, her face instantly turning pale. "Ouch, my stomach. It hurts so much. Lucas, take me to the hospital quickly." Lucas was indeed flustered. Ignoring the chaos in the morning hall and the accusations from the crowd, he scooped Lily up in his arms and stumbled out in a rush. "Family disgrace, such a family disgrace." David Lincoln trembled with rage. I pretended to lower my head, wiping away non-existent tears with the back of my hand, but my gaze remained fixed on the silent man wearing a baseball cap and a black mask. He actually came. Bonnie Lincoln's ashes were gathered and then laid to rest. 3 days later, I'm at work, but my phone is blowing up with calls from Mary, urging me to come back immediately. When I got home, The house was filled with Lincoln's family, and Lily was there too. She and Lucas were sitting so close together there was almost no space between them. They all turned their heads in unison, staring at me with venomous, judgmental glares. Before I could even speak, Mary slammed the hand on the table and started yelling at me, pointing her finger right in my face. "Susan, you vicious, heartless woman." David Lincoln's eyes were so dark and menacing they seemed to drip with venom. "Our Lincoln family must have been blind to bring a jinx like you into our home, someone who stands by and does nothing to save a life." Old Mrs. Lincoln trembled with rage, pounding her cane heavily on the floor. "Our Bonnie died so tragically. It was you, you wretched woman, who caused her death." I feigned confusion and furrowed my brow. "Dad, Mom, Grandma, what are you talking about? How could I have stood by and done nothing?" Lily sat beside Lucas, covering her mouth as she let out a light laugh. "Susan, even now, you're still pretending. You really won't admit it until you're faced with undeniable proof." She leaned weakly toward Lucas. "Lucas, and I have already had someone check the surveillance footage from the street where Bonnie had the accident." Her voice suddenly rose, filled with accusation. "The surveillance footage clearly captured you when Bonnie was lying in a pool of blood. You were watching from not far away. But not only did you not save her, you turned and ran. If you hadn't run, Bonnie wouldn't have died." I almost laughed in disbelief. "In my past life, I was the first to call an ambulance. I followed the ambulance to the hospital. I knelt on the ground begging the doctors. I signed the surgery consent form. I called Lucas over and over again, just because I was the only one by Bonnie's side in the end. They accused me of being the murderer. In this life, I avoided this whirlpool. Yet they still found a reason to throw mud at me just because my parents are gone and I have no family to back me up. Does that mean I deserve to be bullied so shamelessly by them?" I slowly straightened my back, facing everyone's gaze, and spoke each word clearly and emphatically. "I didn't stand by and do nothing. I'm timid. When I heard someone shouting murder, my legs went weak from fear. How could I have dared to go closer to see what was happening? If I had known the person lying on the ground was Bonnie, I would have crawled over to save her, even if I had to drag myself." I paused, then shifted my tone, a cold smile curling at the corner of my lips. "However, speaking of videos, I happen to have a more interesting one here." I took out my phone and, in front of everyone, pressed the play button. In the video, Lily was crying pitifully, desperately clutching Lucas's arm. "Lucas, you have to help me. The police have caught the person who killed Bonnie. He's my nephew. Only 15 years old. He's just a child. He didn't mean to kill your sister. It's because your sister repeatedly mocked me as a mistress who couldn't see the light of day, and my nephew overheard it. That's why he made such a mistake. I beg you, please write a letter of understanding, okay? Otherwise, his life will be ruined. He could face at least 10 years in prison." In the video, Lucas showed no trace of anger over avenging his sister. He held Lily tightly in his arms with a pained expression, then lowered his head and gently kissed her. All right, don't cry. It's just a letter of understanding, isn't it? I'll write it for you. Anything is worth it." The video wasn't long, but it was enough to hit the three elders of the Lincoln family hard. As soon as Bonnie Lincoln died, I hired a private investigator to monitor Lucas and Lily's every move. I never expected such a big discovery. I put away my phone and smiled completely. Lucas had long known who the real murderer was, yet not only did he not avenge his sister, but he also wrote a letter of forgiveness to exonerate the killer. I truly feel sorry for Bonnie Lincoln. Her own brother not only stood by and did nothing to save her but even shielded the very person who killed her. I imagine she can't rest in peace even in the afterlife. Beast. David Lincoln's eyes turned red with rage, grabbing the teacup beside him and hurling it at Lucas, Mary, and old Mrs. Lincoln also lunged forward like mad women, clawing and hitting Lily. "You little wretch, you killed my daughter. And you sent your nephew to murder my daughter. I'll take your life. Withdraw the letter of understanding. He must rot in prison." Lucas shielded Lily firmly in front of him, enduring his parents' fists as they rained down on him. He let out a sudden roar, his voice completely distorted by emotion. "You can't touch Lily. She's already carrying my child." Lucas's words exploded like a thunderclap, reverberating through the Lincoln family's living room. Mary and old Mrs. Lincoln's movements as they lunged at Lily instantly froze. David Lincoln's half-raised ashtray also froze midair. 3 pairs of eyes, filled with a trace of unbelievable ecstasy, landed on Lily's flat abdomen. Lily understood the hesitation in their eyes and immediately straightened her back. She leaned in Lucas's arms, stroking her belly, a smug smile curling at the corners of her mouth. "That's right, I'm carrying Lucas's child, the eldest grandson of the Lincoln family. If you dare withdraw that letter of understanding and let my nephew go to jail, I'll abort this child Immediately, as soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the three elders of the Lincoln family completely changed. They looked at Lily's belly, their eyes filled with struggle and hesitation. The determination to avenge Bonnie Lincoln had long been washed away by their longing for a grandchild. Watching this absurd scene, I felt nothing but disgust. Just because she's pregnant, the murderer who killed Bonnie can be forgiven. So you've decided not to withdraw the letter of understanding, leaving Bonnie unable to rest in peace. My words were like a resounding slap across the faces of Lincoln's family. Lucas, flushed with anger and humiliation, pointed at my nose and roared with a twisted expression, "Susan, you barren hen, what right do you have to make a scene here? You're just jealous of Lily." Barren hen, these 6 words, like 6 red-hot steel needles, pierced straight into my heart. Why can't I have children? Doesn't his whole family know the reason? Lucas and I grew up together, and I loved him blindly back when he got into medical school but couldn't afford the tuition because his family was poor. He came to my house, his eyes red, and told me he loved me. He said if he couldn't afford to study, he might as well drop out, get a job, marry me, and support our family. I looked at the thirst for knowledge in his eyes, and my heart ached beyond measure. I took out the compensation money left to me after my parents died in a car accident and said to him, with a smile, "Go study, I'll support you." I married him, but I lived like a free maid, serving his entire family. Young and old, Bonnie Lincoln never lifted a finger and lived like a princess, while I was the old servant constantly bustling around the stove. I worked so hard for this family that I ended up pregnant unexpectedly, but due to overexertion, I fell down the stairs and lost the baby. The doctor said I've damaged my foundation, and it will be very difficult for me to conceive again. And my husband, as early as his college days, was already entangled with his first love, Lily, unable to let go of her after he became the top cardiac surgeon, achieving both fame and fortune. I, his once devoted wife, became an indelible stain on his reputation. My days, in Lucas's eyes, was him stepping on my sore spot. He even wore a smug smile on his face. "Susan, I advise you to be sensible." He held Lily in his arms, speaking in a chilling, expectant tone. "After all, Bonnie is already dead and cannot be brought back to life. Perhaps she has been reincarnated into Lily's womb to become my child. Then, our family can be reunited and whole again, can't we?" The statement completely shocked my worldview. I thought that was already shameless enough. I never expected that Lincoln's elders would actually show expressions of relief, especially Mary, who looked at Lily's belly with a fanatical gleam in her eyes. Yes, Lucas is right. Bonnie may have died, but our family has gained a new life. This is Bonnie's way of not wanting to leave us, coming back to be with us in a different form. Looking at this family, I thought they had all gone mad. "All right," I spoke calmly. "If your whole family wants to reunite, that's fine. First, let's get a divorce." I pulled out the divorce agreement I had prepared long ago from my bag and slapped it onto the coffee table with a sharp smack. Lucas cheated during the marriage, so he is at fault. I want 70% of our shared assets after marriage. Additionally, I want every penny, with interest, of all the expenses I covered for your college and doctoral studies paid back to me in full. Lincoln's family values money more than their own lives. As soon as I mentioned dividing the property, David Lincoln's face instantly darkened. 70%. Susan, you're dreaming. Let me tell you, you won't get a single penny from our Lincoln family. Mary also rushed forward, her face twisted with malice. "You barren hen, still trying to take our family's money. Get out of here right now." They stared at me with fierce, predatory eyes, their gazes laced with venom, as if they wanted to devour me alive. The fear of being beaten to death by them in my past life washed over me once again, but I did not back down. I forced myself to stay calm, and under their murderous glares, I slowly curved the corners of my mouth into a smile. "Are you sure you won't give it?" I shook my phone. Over the past year, Miss Lily has sent me plenty of intimate photos and ambiguous chat records of her and Lucas, just to show off. Oh, and by the way, the video of Lucas and Lily's wonderful conversation just now is also saved in my email. I've set up a time send, with the recipients being all the hospital colleagues, major media outlets, and all of your friends and family. In 1 more hour, if I don't manually cancel it, these emails will be made public. I want to see where the Lincoln family's dignity will be then. How will Lucas, the so-called top heart surgeon, continue to work at the hospital? And Lily, will your nephew end up serving an even longer prison sentence? Their faces instantly turned deathly pale, like chickens with their necks wrung, unable to utter a single word. After weighing the pros and cons, Lucas signed his name on the divorce agreement. I took the agreement, turned around, and went to the room to pack my things. A few minutes later, I walked up pulling my suitcase. Before leaving, I stopped and looked up at the inconspicuous camera in the corner of the living room. I Rented a small apartment outside, just waiting for the 30-day divorce cooling-off period to pass. Once I got that red divorce certificate, I would move to a new city and start my new life. I thought these 30 days would be very peaceful. I just didn't expect that, after only 5 days, the city would be rocked by a shocking news story. I sat on the sofa, watching the news report on TV. On the screen, the Lincoln family's house was cordoned off with a long line of police tape. The headline was horrifying. Famous cardiac surgeon and family of 5 brutally murdered. Crime scene too gruesome to bear. According to reports, 2 days ago, it was a stormy night with thunder and lightning. The Lincoln family had prepared a table full of fine wine and delicious food at home to celebrate Lily's 2-month pregnancy. After several rounds of drinks, they happily imagined the arrival of the Lincoln family's first grandchild. Suddenly, one by one, they all felt weak and collapsed beside the dining table. Then, a man wearing a baseball cap appeared like a demon out of nowhere, holding a fruit knife in his hand. He launched the most brutal massacre against 5 defenseless individuals. Each person's heart was stabbed over a dozen times, leaving their flesh mangled and no chance of survival. The illegitimate child in Lily's womb, naturally, did not escape either. The police acted quickly and arrested the murderer under a bridge. The next day, the TV screen cut to the police station, where the man was handcuffed to an interrogation chair, yet his face showed no remorse. He laughed maniacally at the camera, repeating only one phrase over and over: "Bonnie, I avenged you. They all deserve to die, every last one of them. Only I am worthy of being your family." I turned off the TV, the deep red wine swirling in the glass, reflecting the myriad lights outside the window. I smiled, thinking of what happened 3 days ago. That day, I went to the park near where Bonnie Lincoln had the accident. I deliberately chose to sit next to a man wearing a baseball cap with a sinister look in his eyes. Then, I took out my phone and played back the surveillance footage from the Lincoln family's living room that day. As I watched the despicable expressions on the faces of Lincoln's family members in the video, tears fell at just the right moment. While heartbrokenly wiping away my tears, I muttered softly, just loud enough for him to hear, "Bonnie, my dear sister-in-law, you died so unjustly. It's my fault. Sister-in-law is useless. Not only could I not avenge you, but I was also thrown out like trash. I'm sorry, Bonnie. Sister-in-law is sorry." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the man beside me clenching his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. That was enough. This man is named John, an orphan with an extremely twisted and obsessive personality, just because many years ago, Bonnie Lincoln happened to show a moment of kindness and gave him a steamed bun when he was on the verge of starvation. From then on, he became obsessively infatuated with Bonnie Lincoln, seeing her as the only light in his life. But Bonnie Lincoln, that self-righteous princess, when did she ever truly look at him? His obsession, his madness, in the previous life, used that fruit knife to stab me dozens of times, leaving me to die with resentment. In this life, he became the most useful blade in my hand. My marriage with Lucas naturally did not end in divorce because of his unexpected death. I became a widow. Just like that, I had no choice but to inherit all of the Lincoln family's property as the sole legal heir. For the rest of my life, I will hire people, day after day, year after year, to pour sewage over their family's graves, let them rot and stink forever underground. After hearing the second story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. When choosing dormitories in college, my best friend beat me to it and chose a single room, so the remaining 10-person room naturally became mine. My best friend enjoyed a comfortable single life throughout the rest of her college years, and in a 10-person dorm, I latched onto a wealthy woman's coattails. After graduating from college, I seamlessly landed a job at the company owned by my wealthy roommate's family. But my best friend, living alone with no one to supervise her studies, ended up failing countless courses and repeating a year. Unable to accept her situation, she pushed me down the stairs when I wasn't paying attention. Opening my eyes again, I found myself back on the day of choosing a dormitory in university. She quickly chose the 10-person room. I stared at the familiar form on my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. The scene was all too familiar. The exact same beginning of university life as in my past life, but this time, the choice was in my hands. "Wendy, have you decided which one to choose?" My best friend Linda's voice came from behind. I turned around and met her seemingly innocent big eyes. In our previous life, she had chosen the single room without hesitation, leaving the crowded 10-person dormitory for me. Who would have thought that the seemingly disadvantageous choice would lead me to meet Winnie Smith, the roommate who would change my destiny? "I haven't decided yet." I pretended to hesitate as I answered, catching a glimpse of Linda's finger subtly pointing toward the single-room option. Memories from my past life flooded back. Linda, my best friend throughout high school, revealed her true colors on the very first day of university registration. She snatched the single room, and I was crammed into a 10-person dorm. At first, I was filled with resentment, until I discovered that one of my roommates was Winnie Smith, the daughter of a multinational corporation's chairman. Actually, I think the 10-person dorm is quite nice. Just then, Linda suddenly spoke, her voice raised an octave. The more people, the livelier it is. A single room is so lonely. My pupils suddenly contracted. No, this was completely different from the previous life. In the previous life, she had covered her nose and said, 10 people sharing one room, that's terrifying, and then without hesitation chose a single room. Really, I suppressed the shock in my heart. I thought you would prefer a single room. Linda brushed her hair aside, revealing a deliberate smile. How could that be? Group life is so much fun. Isn't college all about making friends? She leaned closer to me, lowering her voice. Moreover, I heard that the daughter of the Smith group is in the 10-person dormitory. My heart sank. Winnie Smith's identity was a secret at the beginning of the school year, and it wasn't revealed until our junior year. How could Linda know? Unless, the terrifying guess formed in my mind, Linda had also been reborn. That's great. I forced a smile. Since you like the 10-person dorm, I'll choose the single room then. I prefer quiet anyway. A glint of triumph flashed in Linda's eyes, so fleeting it was almost imperceptible. She quickly locked in the 10-person dorm on her phone, as if afraid I would change my mind. I, on the other hand, leisurely secured the remaining single room, sneering inwardly. My smooth and successful experience in my previous life made her think that a 10-person dorm was a shortcut to success. Unfortunately, what she didn't know was that the conflicts in a shared dorm were beyond imagination. Wendy, you won't blame me, will you? Linda blinked her eyes. I'm doing this for your own good. You're introverted and might feel uncomfortable in a crowd. How could I? I showed a grateful expression. Thank you for thinking of me. After signing my name, I dragged my suitcase toward the single dormitory area. At the corner, I glanced back. Linda was happily exchanging contact information with a few girls, likely trying to gather information about Winnie Smith. The moment I closed the door to my single room, I leaned against it and slowly slid to the floor, finally unable to hold back my laughter. The laughter echoed crisply in the empty room, carrying a sense of relief as if the pent-up gloom from a past life had been swept away. My fingers glided over the smooth wooden floor as I took a deep breath. No longer were there the mixed scents of 10 different shower gels from the crowded 10-person dormitory of my past life, no musty odor from piles of laundry waiting in the corner, only the fresh scent of sun-dried bedsheets. This is what college life should really be like, I murmured to myself, my eyes unexpectedly growing warm. In my past life, on the very first day of school, I was assigned to a 10-person dormitory, and the feeling of despair from that day remains vivid in my memory. That dormitory, located at the end of the hallway, was crammed with 5 bunk beds, leaving only a narrow aisle to walk through. My bed was the lower bunk on the left side by the door, directly facing the bathroom, and every night I fell asleep to the sound of flushing water. I stood up and began to pack my belongings for this life. The single room came with an independent desk, wardrobe, and bedside table, and even had a small balcony. The space that once had to be shared with 9 others in my previous life now belonged entirely to me. Opening the wardrobe, I couldn't help but laugh. In my past life, the 10 of us had only 2 wardrobes, each person allotted less than 30 centimeters of hanging space. In order to secure a spot, I had to wake up an hour earlier every day, retrieving the clothes I would wear that day while others were still asleep. And now, this 2-meter wide wardrobe serves only me. The bathroom is another paradise. In my previous life, 10 people shared 2 sinks and 3 shower stalls, and the morning queue for washing up was comparable to a train station during the spring festival travel rush. I will always remember that cold December morning when I was left with a head full of shampoo foam. When the suddenly cut-off hot water made me scream from the cold, an impatient knock came from outside the door. Can you hurry up? There are other people waiting. But now, I hum a tune as I place my toothbrush and cup in the only spot on the sink, without worrying about them being taken by mistake or accidentally knocked to the ground. Only my skincare products sit in front of the mirror, no need to put labels on bottles and jars, nor do I have to count them every day. After finishing packing, I collapsed onto the single bed in a starfish position. The mattress was much softer than the hard bunk bed I remembered from the 10-person dormitory, and the pillow carried the scent of newness. In my past life, I was always on edge, needing earplugs even late at night to fall asleep. The roommate in the upper bunk snored loudly. The girl across the bed often video called her boyfriend late at night, and the spot by The window was drafty in winter and stuffy in summer. My phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message in the dorm group chat. I tapped to open it and saw a photo Linda had posted in the 10-person dorm group, a crowded room, an aisle packed with suitcases, and a group photo deliberately capturing Winnie Smith in the frame. "Dorm life is so lively," Linda captioned it, just a bit short on space. In the corner of the photo, I saw Winnie Smith standing expressionless by her own bed, surrounded by other girls' luggage. In my previous life, it was I who took the initiative to help her clear the space that had been taken over by others, which earned me her initial trust. But now, Linda is busy striking poses in the photo, completely unaware of Winnie Smith's discomfort. I replied with an envious emoji and then closed the group chat. Let Linda enjoy the bustle she's always dreamed of. I have more important things to do. At the desk, I spread out a brand new notebook and began planning this lifetime's course schedule. In my previous life, because the dormitory environment was too noisy, I had to spend every day in the library until closing time. After returning to the dormitory, I still had to endure all kinds of noise. The long-term lack of sleep caused my grades to hover in the middle range, and now, I can study and rest whenever I want, without having to accommodate anyone else's schedule. My stomach growled, and I glanced at the time, 5:30 p.m. In my past life, I usually didn't dare leave the library at this time because once I went back to the dorm to get my meal card, finding a study seat again would be as difficult as climbing to the sky. But now, I can go out to eat anytime without worrying about returning to find my bed piled with other people's belongings or discovering that my charger has mysteriously disappeared again. In the cafeteria, I leisurely picked out the dishes I liked, no longer wolfing down my food in a rush like I did in my past life. While carrying my tray to find a seat, I caught a glimpse of Linda and Winnie Smith sitting in a corner. Linda was talking animatedly, while Winnie Smith kept her head down, eating and occasionally nodding perfunctorily. I chose a spot where I could see them without being noticed. Linda's performance was too obvious. She kept putting food on Winnie Smith's plate and exaggeratedly praised her outfit, acting just like a peacock trying to attract a mate. In my previous life, it took me 3 months to get Winnie Smith to let her guard down, not because we lived in the same dorm, but because I took her to the infirmary when she wasn't feeling well. Linda clearly only remembered the outcome but had no idea about the process. Back in my single room, I made a cup of floral tea and sat on the small balcony watching the sunset. At this hour, the 10-person dormitory is at its noisiest. Some are practicing guitar, some are live streaming, some are teaming up to play games. While I can only hide inside my mosquito net, trying to focus, my phone rings again. It's a private message from Linda. "Winnie Smith is so hard to approach. Do you have any suggestions?" I almost choked on my tea. Linda was actually asking me for help. I deliberately waited a few minutes before replying. "Be sincere, don't overdo it." After sending that, I set my phone to silent and tossed it onto the bed, walked over to the desk, opened my computer, and started previewing the content for tomorrow's class. The quiet room is filled only with the sound of keyboard clicks and the occasional chirping of birds outside the window. How I longed for such a study environment, and now I've finally gotten my wish. This time of day is usually when I feel the most anxious. The homework due for tomorrow's morning class isn't finished yet, but the dorm is so noisy that I can't even think. I want to rest early to recharge, but my roommate's nightlife is just getting started. And now, at exactly 10 o'clock, I turn off the bedside lamp, stretching my body in absolute darkness and silence. The lavender sachet by the pillow emits a soothing fragrance, and I feel drowsy almost immediately. In a daze, my phone screen lights up. I force my eyes open. It's a photo sent by Linda. The 10-person dormitory is brightly lit, with a group of girls gathered around playing a board game. The background is filled with screams and laughter. The time showed 1:15 a.m. College life should be this lively. Linda's words were full of bragging. I smiled and turned off the notification, tucking my phone under the pillow. Let her enjoy her excitement. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., when she and her roommates struggle to get up for their early class, I will appear in the classroom full of energy, sitting in the center of the first row. And this was only the first day of a happy life in a single room. The next morning, when I pushed open the classroom door, there were still 15 minutes until class started. I chose a seat in the center of the third row. In my previous life, this spot was always taken by early arriving classmates, and because my dorm was too noisy to sleep well, I often arrived at the classroom just in time and could only sit in the corner. As the students gradually arrived, the classroom slowly filled up. When the class bell rang, the professor had already started taking attendance. Suddenly, the back door was flung open with a loud bang as it hit the wall. The whole class turned around to see Linda standing breathlessly at the door, her hair sticking out as if it had been swept by a typhoon. The shirt button was misaligned by one, and the right sneaker's shoelace was still untied. Sorry," she gasped, out of breath. The dorm alarm didn't go off. The professor frowned. Name, Linda. A few snickers echoed in the classroom. In her previous life, Linda was always one of the first to arrive in the classroom, with impeccable makeup and well-dressed, often looking down on us latecomers who rushed in at the last minute. But now, the roles have completely reversed. Find a seat and sit down. Be more careful next time. The professor continued taking attendance. Linda staggered toward the back row, casting a complicated glance at me as she passed by. I pretended not to see it and lowered my head to write today's date in my notebook. After class, as soon as I had packed up my books, Linda rushed to my desk. Wendy, I can't take it anymore. That dorm is simply not fit for human habitation. I looked up and finally noticed that the dark circles under her eyes were even worse than yesterday, her eyes bloodshot. What's wrong? I asked, my tone so calm it even surprised me. Tina, the one in the bunk across from me, snores like a tractor. I wore 3 layers of earplugs and it still didn't help, Linda said through gritted teeth. And Mia by the window, video chatting with her boyfriend at 3 a.m., laughing like an old hen. I almost couldn't hold back my laughter. Tina's snoring and Mia's late-night video calls were the classic routines that used to torment me. I never expected that, even after being reborn, these shows would be passed on to Linda unchanged. Oh, and there's something even more outrageous. Linda continued to pour out her grievances, completely oblivious to my expression. My newly purchased SK2 cream, I've only used it twice and half of it is already gone. Lisa insists it's her own identical product, but the mark I made on the bottom of the jar has clearly disappeared. You could report it to the dorm supervisor, I deliberately offered. Useless advice, dorm supervisor. Linda's voice rose an octave. That Monica just said, dorm life is all about mutual tolerance, and then did nothing about it. I suggest you get used to it. I stood up. After all, you chose this dorm yourself. In the following weeks, Linda's daily complaints became a regular routine. Sometimes we'd run into each other in the cafeteria, other times we'd coincidentally meet at the library. But more often than not, she'd just knock directly on the door of my single room. The topics of conversation also evolved from initial sleep issues to all sorts of bizarre incidents. Lucy actually used my towel to wipe her feet, and she said they looked so similar she couldn't tell them apart. They collected my drying underwear by mistake, and when they returned them, 2 pieces were missing. Every time I hear her complain, I maintain a polite expression of sympathy, while secretly feeling fortunate in the tranquility of my single room. Last night, Linda knocked on my door again, saying the dorm's air conditioning was broken, and 14 people had to squeeze together all night like steamed buns in a steamer. Meanwhile, I was sitting at my desk, enjoying the coolness of the autumn night. This afternoon, I bumped into Linda again at the library. She looked even more haggard than a few days ago, holding an extra-large iced Americano in her hand. What's wrong now? I closed the literature I was reading. Lucy, she spat out the name through gritted teeth. The one sleeping on the lower bunk by the door, borrowed my power bank and won't return it, insisting it's hers. I blinked. Jenny had been notorious in her previous life for borrowing other people's things, especially small items like power banks and charging cables. Do you know what the funniest part is? Linda continued, completely lost in her own anger. That power bank clearly had my initials LY engraved on it, and she actually used nail polish to cover the letters and change them to ZY. Does she think I'm blind, this time? I couldn't hold back and let out a light laugh. In my past life, I once found my missing lipstick in Linda's makeup bag, with the WW label scratched off and replaced with LY. Linda gritted her teeth. Thankfully, Winnie Smith has no issues at all. She's quiet and polite. If only the whole dorm were filled with people like her, I sneered inwardly. Winnie Smith has no issues. Just wait until we've spent more time together, and you'll realize she's the biggest problem in the entire dorm. My phone vibrated while I was organizing my notes at the desk in my single room. I swiped open the phone screen, and Linda's message immediately popped up, a photo of her and Winnie Smith cheek to cheek. In the photo, Linda was beaming, her meticulously made-up face almost pressing into the camera, while Winnie Smith, though her lips were curved upward, had a distant look in her eyes, her body noticeably leaning to the other side, exuding an overall sense of discomfort. Look, Winnie and I have already become good friends. Linda's words were brimming with pride. She promised to take me to a high-end cocktail party this weekend. I heard there will be many business elites there. I zoomed in on the photo and noticed the faint dark circles under Winnie Smith's eyes. This detail was like a key, instantly unlocking the floodgates of my past life memories. In her previous life, Winnie Smith was far from as glamorous as she appeared on the surface. She suffered from severe depression and an eating disorder, and her decision to live in a 10-person dormitory was merely an act of defiance against her father. The head of the Smith Group opposed her choice of major in college, so she deliberately gave up the family mansion and squeezed into a crowded shared dormitory to experience the life of an ordinary person. Congratulations, I replied briefly, but couldn't help the corners of my mouth turning up. Linda thought she had found a treasure, but she didn't realize she was taking on a ticking time bomb. Putting down my phone, I walked to the window and took a deep breath. The glamour Winnie Smith showed in her previous life was far from the surface. Those weary nights stirred by Linda's photos are particularly vivid. I remember it was around midterms in the first semester of freshman year. At 3 in the morning, I was awakened by a muffled sob. Following the sound, I found Winnie Smith curled up in the corner of the public bathroom, with fresh cuts on her wrist. That night, I stayed with her in the hospital emergency room until dawn, listening to her intermittently express her resentment toward her father and her self-loathing. She's just temporarily feeling down, right? Linda's new message interrupted my recollection. She's a rich family's daughter. It's normal for her to have a bit of a temper, I sneered. A bit of a temper. In her previous life, Winnie Smith's little temper included, but was not limited to, for 3 consecutive days, she neither ate nor drank. Suddenly disappeared in the middle of the night, forcing the entire dorm to search for her, and even burned the black card her father had given her in the dorm. As the only roommate who had earned her trust, I had no choice but to clean up all these messes. The most terrifying part was that the dorm supervisor was a female bodyguard her father had arranged through connections. Officially, she was there to take care of the young lady's life, but in reality, she was monitoring every move in the dorm. That woman named Monica lingers outside the dormitory every day, scrutinizing us with her gaze, and even knocking on the door to question me if I spend too long in the bathroom. This time, Linda sent a video. She was enthusiastically introducing something to Winnie Smith, with a box of exquisite pastries on the table. I specifically asked my family to send some local specialties from my hometown. Winnie said she's never tasted such authentic handmade pastries before. My finger hovered over the screen, unsure of how to respond. In my previous life, I shared peanuts with her, never expecting that Winnie Smith would have a severe allergic reaction to them. As it happened, the specialty snacks from Linda's hometown were made with peanuts. After that allergic reaction incident, Winnie Smith's father nearly had everyone in the dorm expelled. It was only after I knelt down and pleaded that the situation was resolved. As long as she likes it. In the end, I only replied with these 4 words: let Linda discover this little surprise on her own. This time, I won't give a warning in advance. Walking over to the desk, I opened a psychology textbook. In my previous life, to take care of Winnie Smith, I self-studied a great deal of psychology knowledge, even changing my career path because of it. Now, this knowledge can finally be used purely for my own benefit, rather than constantly guarding against the emotional breakdowns of a certain young lady. Cheerful laughter came from outside the window. I leaned out to look and saw Linda and Winnie Smith walking from the direction of the cafeteria. Linda was holding on to Winnie Smith's arm, although the latter was smiling. Her body language clearly showed resistance to such intimacy. When she reached the dormitory building, Winnie Smith suddenly shook off Linda's hand and quickly walked through the entrance. I could almost imagine Linda's stunned expression at that moment. Winnie Smith was just like that, outwardly gentle and polite, but with clear boundaries. Any overly intimate gesture would trigger her defense mechanism, and Linda had clearly crossed the line. The phone lit up again, this time with a voice message from Linda. I clicked play, and it was her hushed voice. Wendy, Winnie suddenly got angry just now, and I have no idea why. You're really good at dealing with people, right? Hurry up and tell me what to do. I stared at this message for a full 10 seconds. In my past life, I was indeed close to Winnie, but it came at the cost of countless sleepless nights and utter exhaustion. Linda only saw the glamorous invitation to the cocktail party, unaware of what it truly required behind the scenes. Give her some space, I replied. She probably doesn't like friends who are too clingy. Every time Winnie Smith had an emotional breakdown, she would lock herself in the bathroom for hours. Everyone in the dorm either remained indifferent or complained incessantly. Only I had no choice but to wait outside the door, fearing she might do something extreme. Once when she slit her wrists, I was the first to discover it and called an ambulance. That night, her father rushed to the hospital and, instead of thanking me, coldly questioned why I hadn't kept a better eye on his daughter. I took a deep breath and pushed these dark memories back into the depths of my heart. Now, I live in a quiet single room, far away from all these dramatic scenes. Let Linda experience these things for herself. She will soon realize that the so-called rich roommate is not the golden key she imagined. When I went to the cafeteria for dinner in the evening, I deliberately took a detour through the 10-person dormitory area. Through the half-open door, I saw Linda sitting by Winnie Smith's bed, saying something, while Winnie Smith had her back to the door, her shoulders stiff. The box of pastries on the table remained untouched. "Winnie, just try a small bite. I saved it especially for you." Linda's voice drifted out. I quickened my pace to leave, silently counting down in my heart. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Winnie, what's wrong with you?" Linda's scream came from behind. I didn't look back and walked straight to the cafeteria. At this moment in my previous life, I should have rushed back immediately to help, called an ambulance, and stayed at the hospital all night. But this time, I chose to leisurely enjoy my dinner in the cafeteria, even ordering an extra dessert back in my single room. I brewed a cup of hot tea and sat by the window to admire the campus night view on my phone. Screen kept lighting up, showing Linda's missed calls and a series of urgent messages. Winnie suddenly broke out in a full-body rash. "The infirmary said she needs to be sent to the hospital." "Wendy, where are you? Reply to me quickly. Her father is here. It's terrifying. Save me. They said they're going to hold me responsible. This time, I'm no longer the fool who cleans up others' messes. This time, I want to see for myself what's really behind the lucky opportunities that Linda gets. To experience firsthand, the same ones I had in my previous life, I picked up my phone and sent a reply to Linda. "Sorry, just saw this. Since you're her roommate and good friend, just spend more time with her." After sending this message, I turned off my phone, having no friends to be responsible for. This is exactly how college life should be. She will soon realize that some luck is far from as wonderful as it appears on the surface. At 11 p.m., I was reviewing research materials in my single room when I was suddenly interrupted by a series of urgent knocks on the door. "Wendy, open the door. I know you're in there." Linda's voice came through the door, clearly choked with tears. I saved the documents and walked leisurely to open the door. The Linda outside almost made me fail to recognize her. Her once carefully styled curls were now greasily plastered to her scalp, her eye makeup had smudged into panda eyes, and a noticeable ulcer had formed at the corner of her mouth. She was holding a bulging backpack in her arms, looking as though she was preparing to move. "I want to switch dorms with you." "No." Immediately, she barged in without waiting for an invitation, her backpack thudding onto my bed. I closed the door and leaned against the desk, calmly observing her. In our past life, Linda was always elegant and composed. When had she ever been in such a disheveled state? "What's wrong? Isn't the 10-person dorm super awesome?" I quoted her earlier description. "Stop playing dumb." Linda's voice suddenly rose sharply, then dropped abruptly, as if afraid of being heard by people in the hallway. "You know what kind of a lunatic Winnie Smith is? She slit her wrists again last night." Blood was splattered everywhere. When the ambulance came, the whole building came out to watch the commotion. I raised an eyebrow. In my previous life, the first wrist-slitting incident happened after the midterm exams. But this time it was a whole month earlier. Linda's thoughtful concern had clearly accelerated the deterioration of Winnie Smith's condition. "Then what?" I asked calmly. "Then, what else is there to say?" Linda grabbed her own hair. "Her father sent 4 bodyguards to stand guard at the dormitory entrance 24/7. We have to have our bags searched every time we come and go. That psycho Monica even checks my diary." Her voice began to tremble. "And all those ridiculous rules. Lights out at 10 p.m. No loud talking. No eating smelly food. This isn't a dormitory. It's a prison." I had also experienced these things, but at the time, I had no choice but to endure them. "So you want to switch back to a single room?" "Yes. Anyway, you did quite well in a 10-person dorm in your previous life." Linda looked at me with hopeful eyes. "Let's switch back." As if nothing ever happened, the water cup suddenly stopped midair, and Linda's eyes widened as she realized she had let something slip. The room fell into a deathly silence. I looked up at her, a knowing smile curling at the corners of my lips. "So you've been reborn too?" Linda's face turned from red to pale, then from pale to ashen. What do you mean?" "Exactly what I said." I stared straight into her eyes. "I know you've been reborn, just as you know I've been reborn too." "Just now, no, Linda," I interrupted her, "let's stop pretending. The first thing you did after being reborn was to take the 10-person dormitory because you saw in your previous life that I met Winnie Smith there, but you only saw the surface glamour, not the price behind it." Her lips began to tremble. The carefully constructed facade was crumbling. "You don't know that Winnie Smith has severe depression and borderline personality disorder," I continued, "nor do you know how controlling her father is, or how much energy it takes to handle late-night hospital visits and emotional soothing." I took a step forward. "You only see the parties, the celebrities, and the internship opportunities, but you don't see what it takes To get them, a sudden fire ignited in Linda's eyes. So you knew all along, you deliberately let me jump into this pit of fire. Did I ever try to stop you? I retorted. On the first day of school, you were the one who eagerly rushed to sign up for the 10-person dormitory. I just didn't share the information from my past life. You bitch. Linda suddenly stood up. You could have told me the truth. We're best friends. Best friends? I sneered. Did you consider us best friends when you pushed me down the stairs out of jealousy in our past life? Did you ever show any concern when I was tormented by Winnie Smith to the point of a nervous breakdown? I approached her. You only said how lucky with a sour tone after hearing I got the internship at Sue's group. Linda seemed to be hit where it hurt, staggering back a step. So after you were reborn, you planned to get back at me? No. I shook my head. I just want to live a different life. In my previous life, I was trapped in a 10-person dormitory, forced to take care of Winnie Smith. Although I gained some benefits in the end, that wasn't the life I wanted. This time, I chose a single room. I chose to focus on my studies. These achievements were earned by my own efforts, not by pleasing anyone. Linda suddenly slumped onto the bed like a deflated balloon. I can't take it anymore. Her voice was choked with tears. That dorm is going to drive me crazy. Winnie Smith is completely dependent on me now. She even needs me to accompany her when she showers. Monica is watching my every move. Please, Wendy, let's switch back. Once upon a time, in my past life, I had also pleaded with Linda in such despair, hoping she would share some of the responsibility of taking care of Winnie Smith. What was her response back then? This is your blessing. Others don't even get the chance to get close to Miss Smith. No, my voice was calm but firm. Why, aren't you doing well now? You don't need Winnie Smith at all. Precisely because I'm doing well, I won't give up my single room. I walked to the door and opened it. Besides, this is the path you chose yourself, Linda. Rebirth gave us the chance to change our fate. You chose to repeat my old path, while I chose to forge a new direction. A flicker of resentment passed through Linda's eyes. You'll regret this, maybe. I shrugged. But at least for now, I'm quite satisfied with my life. She grabbed her backpack and rushed out the door, then suddenly turned back in the hallway. You think just because you have good grades and a scholarship, you're something special. Without the Sue family's connections, you'll be nothing after graduation. Good night, Linda. I smiled and closed the door. Soon, in my sophomore year, I earned the national scholarship through diligent study. My gaze swept over the admiring and envious looks of my classmates, finally landing on a familiar figure in the farthest corner, Linda. Even from such a distance, I could see how much she had changed. The girl with the exquisite makeup and radiant spirit from the start of the semester was gone, replaced by a girl with a hunched back and a vacant stare. Her dry, yellowish hair was carelessly tied into a ponytail, and a few noticeable pimples had appeared on her forehead. The dark circles under her eyes couldn't even be concealed by a thick layer of foundation. She looked at least 10 years older than her actual age. Fate truly works in mysterious cycles. Only this time, I was the one standing in the light, while she was the one curled up in the shadows. After receiving the award, I saw Linda trudging toward the 10-person dormitory area, her back hunched like a little old woman, and ahead of her was Winnie Smith's figure, sticking close to her every step of the way. Rebirth gave me the chance to rewrite my fate, and I, at last, have handed in a perfect answer. After hearing the stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.